Okay, we are ready to learn a lot in this next lesson. There's a lot of stuff to cover so that you can do assignment number 4, okay, which is called the layers assignment. And this one does take a little bit of getting used to. So again, at any time, pause the video and practice as much as you want. The first thing that we're going to need is some files for this. So back in your classroom where the Photoshop download files are, we are going to look for, in the practice file, we're going to number 6 and number 7. We're going to work on the TV and the basketball. So if I click the TV and hold down my command key and then click basketball, I can see I have both of them selected. I right click with both of them selected, one of them, and I download them together. That is going to zip them up into one file. So we're going to wait for that zip to happen. There it goes. So now over here, and again, you pause the video if you're not ready for the next step. You're going to do Show in Finder, and it'll come through in a Drive download, a little white icon with a zipper on it. You have to double click that little white folder with Drive download, and that will give you now a blue folder. That's the same thing, unzipped, and there are my two files. So I'm going to have my TV, hold down my command key and select my basketball. You can copy and paste, drag and drop, whatever you want to do. I'm going to take mine to my practice folder, and I'm going to paste them inside of that so that I have those ready to use for my project. Okay? All right, now for this assignment, we're going to start a little bit differently. We're not going to open a photo. What we're going to do is we are going to do a little practice with brushes. So let's just create a new file. Yours might look a little different than mine. Let me see. Across the top, go to Photo. Okay. And then see where it says View All Presets? You probably need to open that up. There you go. Let's take this one that says right here, Landscape 10 by 8. Right here, Landscape 10 by 8. And we're not going to worry about any of this stuff over here. This basically lets us put a file name on it, which we'll do later. It tells us it's 10 inches by 8 inches. It is a landscape document. If you wanted portrait, you could change that. This is the resolution. So there's about 300 pixels in an inch. Okay. And all this other stuff. So we're just going to leave that and click Create. So we're not opening a photo. We're kind of like creating like a white piece of paper for you to be able to kind of draw on. I'm going to change a couple settings here that might look, you don't have to do this. They might now look more like yours. So I will try my best to do that. If at any time your dock down here gets in your way, Option Command D, and it'll go away for you. Option Command D brings it back. So if that's ever in your way, you can move it. This is your piece of paper, okay, that you will be working on. So in this assignment, one of the things that you have to learn to use are some of the brushes. And we have some other lessons where we'll get into brushes a little bit more. But you're going to need a brush for this lesson. So if you start looking in your toolbox over here, here's your brush tool right here. Okay. And again, if you right click it, you'll notice there are other types of tools that do similar things. We're just going to use the brush tool. And one of the things that will happen is your brush options will now be across the top. Every time you pick a new tool, then these options will change. You don't have to change it, but like if I click on my crop tool, then I have these options up here because this is my crop tool. So we're going to be on the brush tool. And one of the first things that you probably want to do is like pick a color for your brush. So down here in the corner, or yeah, at the bottom of your toolbox, you see this black. It's called your foreground color. And the white one is your background color. It doesn't actually set your background the way that, like your paper, it has a different meaning, which we'll get to later on. But let's just pick a foreground one color for our project. I don't care if you pick red. You can take this little triangle here and slide it up into the blue section and then go ahead and click on that. That's the new color that you would be drawing in. This is, you originally started with that little square being black. So moving this slider through this rainbow of colors, like if you wanted something in the yellows, you could pick something like that. I'm going to pick something a little bit darker. You pick whatever color you want, and then you just simply say, okay. So I have a brush that when I stripe it across my paper, and you can kind of freely make whatever shape you want, it creates that brush effect. Coming up here to this toolbar where your brush options are, my brush size is 60. And just think of that just like picking up different brushes. You have small brushes that you can paint with when you're an artist, or big brushes. This is a size 60 brush, and it's set right here, and they measure it in pixels. Max is, of course, 5,000 pixels, which is way too large, and a little small, tiny brush. You can make that. If you have a large area to cover, you're going to want a bigger brush. If you have a smaller area to cover, you want a smaller brush. So let's just set it 60s, 70s, 80s. And then if you just click that arrow, this box right here will go away. And don't worry if your box does not look like mine. Just make sure you can find where you can change the size of the brush. So now you can see that I have the size of my brush is a little bit larger. If I want to brush in a different color, I just come back over here. Maybe I want a green brush. I choose green and I swipe across my paper, and I can make a green brush pattern. If I change the size of the brush, and again, pause the video when you want to. There's my smaller brush size. And actually, there's a bunch of stuff you can actually do. We won't necessarily explore with it right now. There are special effect brushes that you can use that give you different kinds of effects. Dry media brushes that give you different kinds of effects than just the saturated brush that we're using right now. And then the hardness of the brush, like if I back that hardness off and I'm going to increase the size of it, it might be a little easier for you to actually see it. See that the hardness has to do with the edge around it. This is a really hard edge. This is starting to get a little bit blurred around the edges. That's because I changed the hardness of the brush to 15%. If I change that all the way to 0%, and I start to make a line, you see how it's really, really blurry on the edge of the brush. The hardness of the brush, the harder the edges. And again, you can either click this little arrow or you can click over here on your paper, but when you click on your paper, you get a spot. You get a really hard edge on your brush, okay? So that's one of the things that you're gonna have to be able to do in this project, is create a brush stroke. That's the quick way. We have other lessons where we're gonna learn about that. I'm just gonna simply start doing Command Z, and I'm going to get rid of all my brush strokes, and you can do the same thing. So you're back here at just an empty piece of paper. Okay. All right. So what we want to do is we want to take the picture of the basketball and the TV, and we actually want to place them on our piece of paper. It's a little misleading because you think I'm just going to do the file menu and I'm going to open it. That's not what you're actually going to do. If you actually opened up the picture, that one of them that you saved, let me get to my folder here. You can just kind of watch this. Let's see, here's my assignments, or no, my practice file. If I open up like that TV, okay, what happens is it opens it on a new tab up here, which means I have a new file. And that's not what I want. I want the TV to go on this piece of paper. So it's not an open command. If you open this with me, join me and click that little X and close it up and just get back to your paper, okay? And so we're going to start by doing what's called a place embedded, E-M-B-E-D-D-E-M, excuse me, I didn't spell that right, E-M-B-E-D-D-E-D, embedded command. So you go to the file menu, and it's about halfway down. See, that says right there, place embedded, okay? Embed means to place it in another object. It's embedded inside another. So we're going to start actually with the basketball. So you choose place embedded and choose file number 7, the basketball, and go ahead and place it, okay? And it's going to come in looking like this, okay? And so what you want to do is you're going to have to learn how to size your basketball. There's handles on the corner, and if you drag them in, you'll notice that, you know, I'm not keeping my picture proportional. So if that's a problem, we have to learn how to fix that. In the corner, it will tell you the inches of the picture, or it might tell you the pixels of the picture. And you can always just kind of look and see kind of about the same size. We're practicing, so this is not going to be a big deal if you don't get it exactly the same size. I'm going to stretch mine back out. This corner over here, this handle here, then pushes it that way. If you bring your cursor to the outside of the picture, like to the corner where you see I have the double-headed arrow, if I hold on my trackpad, I can rotate my picture. Okay, and so learning how to do different things, like seeing like this little arrow moves it around. If you hold down the shift key, what does that do when you drag it in? Actually, the shift key keeps mine proportional. Yours might be different. The command key might do this thing, like make it kind of 3D-ish. And you can always stop and do Command Z and undo it and bring it back to what its original size was. So again, we're practicing. So let's, however you want to, take and make the size of this basketball. Maybe I've got it mine about 4 inches or so, or around 900 pixels. And I'm going to place that basketball in the top right-hand corner. And then we have kind of learned this in another lesson, that once you get this set the way that you want to, up here, you want to place that, commit the transform that you made, the changes that you made. You can either click the check mark or tap on return, and it will place the object for you. Okay, you'll notice that you now have down here, I'm going to turn my dock off. You now have, this is where we have our called layers. Your background layer is the white layer, and then the basketball that you have, that's a completely different layer, okay? And so we're going to get some more layers here as we start to understand what it is that we're going to do, okay? And so what we want to do, let's say like you place that basketball and you're like, wait a minute, I need to change the size. So if you have your basketball layer selected, come up to the edit menu and do free transform. There's transform, there's free transform. Let's do with free transform. Now the handles are back. So now you can go back to changing the size and moving your graphic around as you need to, okay? And then when you get it the way you want it, you press enter or the check mark. So again, I can't change the size of it right now. If I want to change the size or move it, I got to pick the layer that it's on over here. See, if I do the background layer, it won't work. But if I have the basketball layer selected, then I come up here to the image menu or the layer menu, nope, the edit menu, and do free transform. Edit, free transform, handles are back. Now I can move it, okay? So you kind of have to remember that little trick, okay? We're going to start to get 3 or 4 different layers in here, and one of the things that you actually can do with these layers is you can rename them. And this one is pretty easy, a good name, but just for practice purposes, if you right click where it says 7 basketball, there is a, or I shouldn't say right click, if you double click it, there you go, it opens up the file name, type like my basketball, and then enter. So now you've named the layer, and that's something that you're going to want to do as well. If you right click that basketball layer and you duplicate it, That means I'm going to have two basketballs. You're going to have two basketballs on your white piece of paper. If I duplicate the layer, it asks me, well, what do you want to call the second layer? Well, let's call it my basketball. Get rid of copy and put a 2 there, and just click OK. Well, it made a layer called my basketball 2, but I don't see the second basketball. That's because it's on top of this one. So if you come up here and get your move handle, this move tool right here, and you just go right to the top of that basketball and you pull off, you'll see there's my second basketball. And now when you go down to the layers panel, you can kind of see my basketball is in the top right-hand corner, basketball 2 is in the top left-hand corner. Okay? And you could continue to do that as many times as you wanted to. Let's right-click my basketball 2 and duplicate it a third time. Change the name of that layer, my basketball 3, and then click OK. Then on top of this, you pull down, and there are your 3 basketballs that you have. Okay? Now, when we start to save something like this, different than what we've done in the past where we open a photo, we have all these layers down here, okay? And we want to preserve those layers. So if it comes to the end of a class period or comes to the end of your work time, and you're like, okay, I want to save this and bring this back and open it up and work on it, you don't want to save it as a JPEG file. If you save it as a JPEG file, all these layers will be gone and you can't make any changes to them. So it's similar to like when we did movies. You have to save it as a project file so that you can come back and you can work on it later on. So up here, File, Save As, okay, we're going to make our way to our practice folder. Okay, and I'm already in my practice folder, so if you need to get there, you go there. And you'll notice right away the extension is not JPEG, it's PSD, a Photoshop document. And that's what you want it to be. Okay, and let's take the file name out that is there and call it Layers Practice. Okay, and then format it as a Photoshop file, and then you save it. And then when it comes to these Photoshop format options, just click OK. So now, if you were to close this up and open it back up, these layers would be here. If you save it as a JPEG, the layers are not there. And if you save it as a JPEG, there'll be 3 basketballs. But if the directions say delete the 3rd layer, you will not be able to do that in a JPEG file. Okay, so save, when you need layers, you have to save as a Photoshop file. And a Photoshop file will never be turned in as an assignment either, and we'll get to that later. Okay, so we've got this thing saved, so moving forward, we just need to do Command S. So that's how you create layers. Now, let's say we don't want basketball layer number 3. So if you right-click down here on basketball layer 3, there it is, you delete the layer. Or you can click on the layer and then click this little trash can, and whatever layer you have selected, yep, and that layer is now gone. Okay, and if I do Command S, then it will go ahead and it will save my document. Okay, so I have right now my background and 2 pictures, you could say, on my piece of paper. Okay, all right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to bring in the TV. Okay, so again, it's not an open command, it's a file, place, embedded, and then you pick the TV picture. See right there, there's your Photoshop file right there. Don't open it, just telling you. See, it looks different. It's not a JPEG. So now let's bring in the picture of the TV and place that on our document. And then you go through the same thing. How do you size it? How do you move it? And so let's make it, anything that kind of looks about like this in terms of size. Yeah, a couple inches big. And let's place it right in the middle. I know, and it might cover part of the basketballs up. And again, look at that. You can rotate it, all the little things you can do. And then when you get it in the place that you want it, you either click the check mark in the top right-hand corner or you press return on your keyboard. And if you've made a mistake, like, oops, I need to resize it, make sure the TV layer is selected over here. And then you go to the Edit menu and you do Free Transform. If you go to transform, it will let you do some of these rotate, like flip it horizontal. So I'll let you kind of experiment with that if you wanted to, but otherwise it's free transform. And now you can go ahead and move it, size it, and I'm not going to do anything with mine, but if you wanted to, again, it's edit free transform, and then accept those transform changes, clicking the check mark or pressing return, and so that is then placed on your picture. If you come down here to where it says 6TV, let's just practice. If we're going to rename it, so double click 6TV and type my TV, and then press enter. So now you have the ability to rename those layers. See that? Okay. Now, if you're having a hard time seeing all your layers over here, we're going to turn off, if you have it on, this properties panel. Okay. To do that, you come up here to the window menu. These are all the windows that can be open. Like this is your color window over on the right. If I take that check mark off, that color window goes away. See that? Some people like to have that on there. If you don't like it on there, you can turn it off, turn it on. But we need more space down here. So we're going to go to the window menu and we're going to turn off properties for now. You can always turn it back on. We're going to turn it off. And now you have the ability to see more of your layers panel in terms of what you have for space. Okay. All right. Let's say, and I'm just going to do Command S and I'm going to save that. Let's say that I wanted to take these two basketballs and I want to place them, one here on the left side of the TV, one on the right. So as I click on this basketball, you'll notice that every time I try to put it like on top of the TV, it goes behind the TV. Okay, let's try this one. Yep, goes behind the TV. So what you have to learn, a little bit of the magic of an understanding of layers, is how these layers appear over here matter. The TV layer is on top and the basketballs are underneath it. If you take the My Basketball 2 layer, click on it, and see over here, watch this little hand and follow with me. And again, pause the video if you need to. I'm going to click and drag it up to the top of the layer list. See that little blue line? That means I've placed it in that location. And now when I grab Basketball 2, look at that. It now goes on top of the TV. But now it's a little bit too large. So now back up to the Edit menu, and you do Free Transform. And you can then start making that thing smaller and then reposition it. Looks like I'm going to need it a little bit smaller to fit. Or maybe what I want to do is go ahead and enter. Maybe I want to click on my TV and now go to Edit Free Transform. So there's lots of ways to do this. Maybe I want to make my TV just a little bit bigger. Reposition it just a little bit. And then enter. Then my basketball the other basketball still goes behind. So then I need to move my basketball. As long as it's above my TV, it doesn't have to be above Basketball 2. It can be, but it just has to be above my TV. And you drop it. Now I'm going to Edit Free Transform. If you can remember Command T, that's the shortcut for Free Transform. So now you can take your time, again, to size it and move it and place it so that you have like two of them side by side, hit return, and you've placed both of your basketballs on your screen. Command S and you save it as a Photoshop file. Again, saving it as a Photoshop file allows you the opportunity to open it at a later date and still have all your layers. If you save it as a JPEG, which you eventually will want to do, then you don't have the ability to open the file up. The JPEG file cannot be opened and work with layers. If you want to work with layers, you have to have a Photoshop file. Okay, now let's go back to the brush thing that we just did. Let's say that we want to, and this might seem kind of weird, but it just is an understanding of how layers work and brushes work. Let's say I'm going to take the basketball on the right. We want to just kind of put a yellow fill over the top. Later on, we'll learn how to make a really good selection, but for now, we're just going to use it as a way to learn about layers. Okay? So what I want to do, because I want the yellow to be on top of this basketball, I need to make a new layer, and the new layer has to be on top of this basketball. That basketball is called My Basketball. Basketball 2 is the one on the left, My Basketball, and you can tell a little bit by the pictures where they're located. So I'm going to click on My Basketball, and I'm going to add a new layer, but I'm not bringing in a new picture. Okay, I want a layer so that I can put some brush stroke on it. So that means I'm going to travel over here to the layer menu and go to New. And there it is, a new layer. Okay, so I make myself a new layer and I have to name it. I'm going to call it Yellow Brush. And then click OK. And you'll notice right here, I now have a yellow brush layer and there is nothing on it. And one of the things you can do with layers is you see these little eyeballs in front of them. That indicates the layer visibility. Can you see it? Like if I turn this one off, hit that eyeball for My Basketball 2, it goes away visually on my picture. It's not gone. I can just turn that back on. So like if I turn off, and you can watch this, if I turn off all my layers, now I'm going to leave that one on, my background on, you can see I got nothing there. It's just an empty layer that says yellow brush, okay? I can bring those layers back as I wish, okay? And so I want to be on the yellow brush layer, okay? I want a yellow brush, so I'm going to set my foreground color to something in the yellow category. So I'm going to pick this yellow and click OK. And I want to brush in over the top of the orange basketball. So I choose my brush over here. I don't want the history brush tool. I want just the brush tool. Yep. And then look how big it is. Yeah, that might work. Sometimes without clicking, you can tell. And this is not going to be perfect. If you stray outside the lines a little bit, it's okay. There is a zoom option right here. If you wanted to zoom in, okay, you can zoom in and out of an image. You can also do pinching on your trackpad. I'm going to go with my size 70. I want my hardness at 100. I don't want that soft edge around the outside. And so I'm just going to take and I'm just going to start filling in with yellow. And again, whoopsie, I went just a little bit outside the line. That's okay. And you might be going, wait, this might be too small. I'm going to go ahead and finish like tracing. And there are many strategies that you can use. Changing your brush size, whatever you want to do to cover it. Remember, smaller brush sizes for smaller areas. That's good enough for me. And again, if you go a little bit outside, and if you need to pause the video to get yours done, go ahead and do so. So that's just how you can put like a brush stroke, and you can actually see it's yellow right on top of that basketball. And then something that's kind of fun to do, again with your yellow brush selected, is up here, not fill, above it, opacity is at 100%. Okay, so what do you know about opacity, right? If you click that little arrow, it's kind of like how much light gets through. At 100% opacity, not much, I can't see much through the yellow. I can't see any of the orange at all. It's not letting anything through. My eye cannot see through it at 100% opacity. If I drop that to a 50% opacity, or I'm at 49, 51, you can start to see some of the orange now starts to come through, the black stripes on the ball. If I change that to 0, that's like that yellow brush never existed. Okay, if I drag it up here to 78, I get to see more yellow. The farther to the left I drag my opacity, the less yellow I see. Oh, we'll drop it around 50, 60%, and you can actually then see that it's yellow, but it's not completely taking out the basketball, okay? We'll learn in another lesson how to do a selection of that basketball and get that brush to work just perfectly, but for now, we'll leave it work like that, okay? So everything that we talked about in this lesson, you have to learn, you will be doing in assignment number 4. Now, just to show you, you can just do a Command S and save that, but we actually have a bunch of different pictures here. If I click on the Move tool, I got my basketball here, I got my TV, I got my yellow circle, and I got my other basketball. 1, 2, 3, all my layers, 4, and then the background layer 5. Okay, I'm just going to undo and I'm going to put them back, and that's why you work with layers. Okay, now Command S, save that Photoshop file. when you go to turn in this assignment, and there's going to be some others that you're going to turn in the same way, you are not going to turn in this Photoshop file to me, as it will take me forever to download and look at them and all that kind of stuff. So what you have to do is provide me a screenshot, but there's a little catch. I have to see the entire layers panel. Okay, all eyeballs on, all the layers visible. Okay, so Option Command D, if the dock is in your way, Option Command D, turn it off. Okay, if it's not in your way, not a big deal. If under Window, that Properties panel, you don't have to do this, but see what happens if I turn that Properties panel on? I can't see all my layers. So when Miss Versteg, you turn this into me, when Miss Versteg goes to look at this, she's going to go, basketball, yellow brush basketball. Wait a minute, something's missing. Where's the background? There's my, and now I have to scroll. I can't scroll, okay? Not on a screenshot. So you might have to turn off the properties so that you have a bigger placement area for your layers panel. And then you do Command, Shift, and the number 3, not F3, a 3. Command, Shift, 3. That takes a screenshot where I can see this panels, all the layer panels. I see your work, okay? This screenshot goes to your desktop. Okay, so if I minimize this, and I know my desktop's a little messy, but that's the way it goes. There it is, right here. In fact, I got 2 of them. Been practicing. Okay, right here, right here. This is what you would turn in, and I would suggest you take your screenshot and put it in either your assignments. We're going to put this in our practice folder. Okay. Paste, and then you can rename it layers practice. That's going to be a picture file, and then this picture file, that screenshot right there, is what you turn in. Don't give me the PSD, or I will not be able to open it, and then I cannot grade it. So you want to make sure that you have that all taken care of. So again, that should get you through everything you need to know in order to do assignment number 4. And you need good luck with that. And of course, let me know how I can help you.